everyone, welcome back to Paper Made Me Do It. I am sitting out on my front porch while I do this voiceover, so you may be hearing some birds chirping in the background. I hope you don't mind. In this video, I am sharing a single page spread that I did in my Hobonichi Cousin avec, which is what I use for daily journaling, somewhat of a memory keeper, almost with kind of like a scrapbooking type vibe is how I tend to use this book. But I wanted to talk with you throughout this video about some ideas and tips of ways to fill your pages when you just don't feel like journaling. Especially, I think, during this time with the way this virus has affected the whole world. I know there have been several days for me personally throughout the past month where even though journaling is one of my favorite hobbies, I just haven't felt like doing it some days, and I just find that I haven't felt as inspired recently to complete spreads in this book. So I feel like, to be perfectly honest, even this particular page I did not feel like doing. But I decided, since I was already behind on some pages this month and already have some catching up to do, I just decided I would go ahead and knock out one page, and I was so glad that I did. So I just want to encourage all of you, if you've been feeling this way at all and if you've been falling behind in your journaling, just go back to it. Even if you don't feel inspired or have a particular design or theme in mind for your page, just carve out some time for yourself to sit down and throw something on a page. And I honestly feel like you'll be so thankful that you did. Weeks, months, years from now, you'll be able to look back during this unusual period of time in particular and see what was going on in your life. So I know those of us who are essential employees, you've got your own new sources of stress with increased exposure and everything. But even non-essential, people who are fortunate enough to be staying at home during this time, I feel like we're all over the spectrum, but no matter where we fall on that spectrum, we're all being affected by the situation around us in some way. So if you're staying at home, I feel like it's almost one extreme or the other, at least based on what I see and read on social media. It seems like some of us may feel like we're just almost bored to tears because it almost feels like we're stuck at home. If you're in a stay-at-home order and you don't have a lot of tasks or appointments or things to do, you may find yourself, feeling bored or low energy. And then on the opposite end of that spectrum, those of us with children, especially school-age children, oh my goodness. If you're at home and you're having to homeschool, learn how to be a teacher and a parent, you're cooking 3 meals a day instead of 1 or 2, plus the housework, oh my goodness. So I know that we're all being affected by this on very different levels, but I just feel like in the days ahead, no matter where you fall on that spectrum, you will eventually be thanking yourself if you document your life during this time. So I just wanted to give you some practical tips of ways that you can fill your pages even if you don't feel inspired to do your journaling. So I find that my pages are more aesthetically pleasing to me when I incorporate multiple types of media, and that's simply because of the style of journaling that I like to do in this book. I'm assuming if you're here still watching this video, then you either enjoy looking at this style yourself or carrying it out yourself in your own books. So even if you don't have a design or a theme in mind, try to gather at least 3 or 4 different types of media to put on a page. That may be watercolor, washi tape, stickers, stencils. You get my drift. So 3 or 4, printables, 3 or 4 different types of media is going to bring a lot of visual interest to your page. And even if it happens to be a very uneventful day, you're going to have a more interesting looking page when you complete a spread with multiple types of media. So here I've already outlined my day of the week. I usually do that on every day just to practice some type of hand lettering. I've put down a little calendar tear out, a little day of the week printable from Courtney Diaz at Little Raven Ink, and I had previously just stuck down that little heart sticker because I'm also kind of going through a phase of trying to use my stash this month, and so I've just been going through my book occasionally and just throwing down a sticker here or there that will use my stash but not necessarily affect the whole design of a page later. I can kind of work around it. So here I'm going in with the Hobonichi ballpoint pen and just doing a quirky little border around this page. This is something that's kind of a tip to share as well. If you don't have a particular design in mind when you sit down with your supplies, if you do something like this, like the border, this is not difficult by any means, but coloring in all of these little hash marks is time consuming. But if you have the time to spend, then starting out with a somewhat mindless activity like this can kind of get your brain working, and it gives you a few minutes to do some thinking about what can I do next. You may come up with a particular sketch or drawing that you want to do, or some type of layout, but doing a border like this and giving yourself some free time, so to speak, while you carry out the busy work of the border oftentimes can spark your creativity and give you a lot of ideas for completing the spread. So I'm using the red ink in this ballpoint pen on this border, where I typically use the black, but the red is probably the least often used color in my Hobonichi pens. So I just thought I would do something different and use the red. And one reason why I decided to do this with the Hobonichi ballpoint pen is that because the act of coloring in this little border is time consuming enough itself, I did not want to add the additional time at the end of having to wait and let this border dry for several minutes. And so I find that if I use fountain pen ink to do a border like this, the little sections that you color in usually end up being quite wet. And with the fountain pen ink on the Tomoe River paper in the Hobonichi book, it can take several minutes, if not hours in some cases, depending on the ink that you're using, for that border to dry. And we all know the likelihood when you're using different kinds of media and going in and out of a page of smearing something if it's not completely dry. So the benefit of doing a border like this with a ballpoint pen is that you eliminate that waiting process for the ink to dry, and you can just go right into the rest of your spread. So here I'm just putting down some washi. I probably use washi tape on every single page in this book, but it's just one of those little different forms of media that I personally enjoy. And so here I'm going down with a stencil and just writing the numbers 3 and 0 to represent the date. And you can see at this point I'm several minutes into this spread, and I really haven't done any content at this point other than the days of the week and the date. but it's kind of, getting my creative juices flowing. It's adding color to the page and interest to the page. And I really like the way this stenciled date turned out. This is something that I recently started doing, where you trace the outline of the stencil and then continue to hold the stencil firmly in place and take whatever pen you're using, and instead of coloring the stencil in solidly, just kind of scribble around inside the stencil. So it gives the eye the impression that the stencil is filled, but it also looks a little cooler, I think, when it's filled with scribbles instead of solid color. It almost adds another texture and dimension to the page. Now, if you are having an eventful day, or if you do have a lot of thoughts on your mind, then the handwritten part of your journal may take up more room on the page. And you may want to do that first before you start adding stickers or printables or other type media, to make sure that you do allow yourself enough physical space for journaling if you do have a lot on your mind or in your heart to say that day. On this particular day, I mentioned earlier, this was an uneventful day for me. Didn't have a whole lot to say. So instead of doing a large amount of text type journaling, I'm covering this little section of the page with the 5 fountain pens that I've been most frequently using lately. I just decided to write the name of the pen and then the name of the ink color that is in each pen. So this is kind of what I call a little filler section, and you can make yourself a cheat sheet on a post-it note if you need to, or just have these things in the back of your mind. But if you need a filler section on a journal spread, if you don't have a lot to say that day, you can just make little notations like this of either exactly what I'm doing now, or if you're not a fountain pen user, you can make a little list like currently reading, list the books that you're reading or the magazines or the blogs. Currently watching, you can list, what are you watching on Netflix? Are you watching movies or TV series? Or if you're watching YouTube, what are the top 5 channels that you find yourself revisiting during this time? Currently eating, what meals are you making on repeat during this time? So you can just make little bulleted lists about whatever's on your mind at the time. And then at the top of the page, I listed a place for me to go back later today and add the daily statistics related to the virus in my area. The website had not yet been updated for today at the time of making the spread, but I'll go back and add those numbers. I'm trying to do that on most days. And then because I didn't have a whole lot to say in terms of journaling, I decided to use a larger printable to cover some of this page. If you don't have access to printables, you can look through magazines and make some cutouts, or you could do a hand sketch or a hand drawing on the page. But this is a little monster that I'd printed from Courtney Diaz a while back, and he's got an armful of letters in his hands. I just thought he was super cute. And the colors kind of tied into that heart sticker that I had put down on the page previously. So I'm going in now with one of those fountain pens and just writing a blurb of the day. And I feel like the handwritten word on a page is what really makes each entry special. And if you're having a busy day or have a lot on your mind, then you're obviously going to have a lot of handwriting. But even if not a lot is going on, I always kind of think to myself on boring days, I kind of laugh to myself and think, okay, if Seinfeld can have how many successful seasons making a TV show about literally nothing, then I can find one paragraph to write in my journal, right? And so can you. And, you know, depending on the day, you may actually write, I don't even know what to write today. Not a lot going on. Caught up on the housework. Didn't have any appointments today. Spent more time in my recliner than usual and did some reading for pleasure. You know, I mean, that's probably a paragraph right there. So whether you're writing about something very important and very meaningful, or just recording that there's not much to write today, the handwritten word is really going to finish off your spread. So that is it for this spread. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope some of these tips are helpful to you. I hope you're all staying in your journals, staying healthy, staying well. I appreciate y'all watching, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.